Hi, Man's Equality Advocate here, Alan Millard. I am the author of several books, including A Flaw from Within, my last book. And as you can read, it's how women's higher status defies equal justice, violates men, and destroys society. My first book, that being Equality of Man's Claim, is the equality issue from the male perspective and an ethical society's viewpoint. These are available through Amazon. I also have a group called Men's Equality, and that's on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Plus, you can reach me and my resources on Twitter at Alan Millard, Alan Lee Millard on Twitter. So, anyway, what I have to say today is more educational material knowledge on the men's equality front. And it's very valid, very valuable. Female sacredness must end for men's equality to begin. Something is wrong when a topic attached to those with power is too sacred to be addressed. This untouchable status is more than evident when such a power is threatened by a rational reasoning process. Such is the case with a female sexuality and how it can be misused to abuse and violate men. Due to the female sacredness and men being bound to serve women, that common practice is not supposed to be questioned. Sexually teasing men and deliberately misleading men must be recognized for the violation of men it is by law. Not only social practice, but by law and just common decency and consideration. Men are visually, sexually stimulated, which is self-evident not only by porn and women's lingerie, but by women's interactions with men and an appearance sculpted to sexually relate to men prior to sexual intercourse. I mean, this is common knowledge, especially with today's fashion styles and also the awareness at a very young age of what sex is, carnal knowledge. Okay, initiating the sex act without intentions to follow through is something women did not do in the past. Sexual intentions are equivalently expressed by the females of other species. When women present themselves practically naked to men without intending to go through the sex act, they are violating men, which ill intent needs to be recognized as a sex crime. Something a woman has deliberately chose to engage in with a man that's against his will. In the past, women themselves called this act cruel and sadistic on women's behalf. They did not see this for anything other than what it is. Women would say, she's asking for it, because that's what women do anyway when they want to have sex with a man, and a man naturally responds in kind on his behalf. It's so basic that even animals are better, more accountable for their actions than are many women influenced by feminists to use their sexuality as a weapon. Otherwise, when is a woman being real? Does this bait and switch behavior not convey distrust? it is distrust. This machine-like mode lacks any feelings attached to the female's actions. Thus, if she is so detached from her body and what she is doing with it, how can a woman feel anything, let alone claim to be violated by a man who merely acts in kind on his behalf to her? Indeed, how can women suddenly change and feel violated when a man responds fulfilling the normal process on his behalf? Isn't a temporary commitment part of the deal in the sexual interaction? I mean, it's there by nature. Again, even animals are smarter than this or more honest than this. Ironically, women claim men are the ones who are incapable of commitment. No other crime is determined in this way at the sole discretion of only one of two participants in a mutual interaction. Nor does any law tolerate the ill intent behind it, as is the case on a woman's behalf, let alone deem the culprit the victim. Under this auspices, the man is labeled and stigmatized as guilty, basically just for being a male and fulfilling his part in the process. The violation the woman claims is less substantiated than is the man's. The bait and switch sadistic female behavior was not tolerated in the past, even by women, as girls were taught by their mothers, not just were boys. Girls were taught by their mothers to never do this to a male. Again, women knew this was cruel and sadistic. Then, so why, especially with the cardinal knowledge so prevalent at a young female age today, wouldn't they know it now? Influenced by feminist inspired misandry, women obviously do know, but use themselves to criminalize men as a common social practice. With feminist influenced sex laws and the sediments attached, and very, very evil sediments attached, and the past sex laws changed to accommodate, men are held by irrational and unforgiving guidelines, even applying decades later in retrospect to include sex acts that were not yet deemed illegal when they took place. The childish cry of "Me Too" suddenly comes to mind. Ironically, too, when it's convenient, feminists use to their advantage any past prejudices held by our culture, including religious influence, negatively applied to the male sexuality. This includes the dirty, guilty stigma attached to the male sexuality due to a higher sex drive, with sex being disgusting if expressed only by a male. For example, lesbians are considered more acceptable than are gays. Male circumcision is derived through religion as a punishment for being born a male to curb his sexual appetite. And feminists don't stand against but expand upon that. With women now at an early age so in the know about how men are made sexually, there is no excuse me. There is no excuse for women's ill intentions, blatantly expressed towards men per law in their interactions with men. People are either naive or just in denial who fail to admit that this has all been purposely implemented by feminists in their persecution of heterosexual men. A diagram depicting the dilemma in which women now place men features a man and a woman with a red and green light blinking at random, back and forth. Stop, go, stop, go. At the same time, a police officer is watching the man's every move. The woman's, she can do whatever she wants. He's not watching her. Women have insidiously weaponized their sexuality, which is now allowed by law. Do you think if it were a power possessed by men and used by men in such a way to personally violate women and set them up and trap them, that it would be tolerated or even allowed in the first place? No. These laws are made for women to express hate for men conveyed through their sexuality. As the misandric mindset creates many recruits for feminism's motives, men are incarcerated due to the sacredness attached to the female and her body. For equality to exist, this will need to end. We must see the child being abused in men to not only understand but to have empathy for men when it comes to their personal violation by women. Again, besides mothers instilling in their daughters to never do this to a male, mothers would in the past warn their sons about girls who did do this. Boys would be warned that girls they encountered to be so inclined could never be trusted, and that distrust applied in other ways to reveal their poor character. Where are these ethical types of women today? Sadly, most of them are dead. Their ethical teachings are not passed on to future generations, but rather displaced by feminist inspired misandry commonly expressed through the female sexuality against men. Women need to be held to the same accountability level to men. Will the same behavior be tolerated by men regarding other men? Not even close. Men in prison who don't want sex and fear being raped don't solicit, initiate sex to other men, let alone bait and switch. And if they ever did do this, they would be the ones held accountable for it. They wouldn't be victims. This would not be considered a violation of the culprit. So, why, given the same circumstances, would not the same apply to women and their encounters with men?